You didn't score that goal. You weren't on the pitch. You weren't even in the stadium. You were on a sofa, in a living room, possibly in a different country entirely. And yet, something happened in your body the moment that ball hit the net that your nervous system could not tell apart from triumph. Your pulse spiked. Your fists clenched. You screamed at a ceiling. And for a few seconds, something that belonged to 11 strangers felt, without question, like yours. This isn't passion. This isn't loyalty. This is one of the most sophisticated and most ancient psychological systems in the human brain, firing exactly as it was designed to. And once you understand it, you will never watch a match the same way again. The story begins not in a stadium, but in a laboratory. In the early 1970s, a social psychologist named Henri Tajfel ran a series of experiments that would permanently change how scientists understood human identity. Tajfel divided strangers into arbitrary groups, sometimes by something as meaningless as a coin flip, and found something that still disturbs researchers today. People immediately began to favor their own group over the other one. Not slightly, significantly, they awarded more resources to their group, viewed their own group members as more competent and more trustworthy, and felt a measurable sense of pride when their group outperformed the other. The groups had existed for minutes. The members had never met. And still, the US and them response was instant. Tajfel called this social identity theory. The core idea is that humans don't just have a personal identity, a sense of who they are as an individual. They also build their identity from the groups they belong to, family, nation, religion, and yes, football clubs. The group's success becomes personal success. The group's failure becomes personal pain. The boundary between what happens to them and what happens to you dissolves. This is why a World Cup matters, in a way a league table never quite can. Every 4 years, billions of people watch their country distilled into 11 players, and the stakes of every game feel existential, in a way that is genuinely hard to explain to someone outside it. Researchers studying the 2014 World Cup in Brazil found that the heart rates of fans watching their national team play closely mirrored the heart rates of the players on the pitch. Not metaphorically, physiologically. The fans' bodies were playing the game. And when the game ended badly, the cost was real. Studies following the 1998 World Cup found a measurable spike in cardiac events in England on the day England lost to Argentina on penalties. The stress was not entertainment. For some, it was clinical. So why does the brain do this? Why build an emotional life around something so far outside your control? The answer reaches back much further than football. Evolutionary psychologists argue that group identity wasn't optional for early humans. It was survival. Your tribe's success was your success. Your tribe's defeat could mean your death. The emotional system that made you feel pride when your group won, and shame or anger when they lost, was the system that kept you invested, loyal, and willing to sacrifice for the collective. The brain that evolved to care deeply about the tribe is the same brain watching a penalty shootout in the 21st century. The object has changed. The wiring has not. There is a concept in psychology called burgeoning, basking in reflected glory. First studied by Robert Cialdini in the 1970s. Cialdini and his colleagues noticed something simple and slightly embarrassing about human behavior. After a university football team won, students were significantly more likely to wear university merchandise on campus the following Monday. After a loss, they quietly stopped. They said, "We won," after victories. They said, "They lost," after defeats. The distance people put between themselves and a losing team, and close when the team wins, is one of the most consistent findings in all of sports psychology. Because the self is fragile, and it borrows from the group around it constantly, without us noticing. But there is something deeper than borrowed pride at work here. Something that turns casual interest into devotion that lasts decades, and survives decades of disappointment. Neuroscientist Reed Montague and his colleagues found that supporting a sports team activates the same neural reward pathways as personal achievement. The brain releases dopamine not just when you win something yourself, but when the group you identify with wins. Your brain is not making a distinction between their victory and yours. It has decided, below the level of conscious thought, that they are you. This is also why the pain of a loss can feel genuinely disproportionate to what logically happened. Nothing changed in your life, but something changed in you. Because for a brain that cannot cleanly separate self from group, the defeat of the team is experienced, at some neurological level, as a defeat of the self. Watch a World Cup final go to penalties. Watch the faces of the fans as each kick is taken. What you are seeing is not entertainment. You are watching people experience something their nervous system registers as genuinely dangerous. Uncertainty about survival, about belonging, about worth. And when it ends, when one side erupts and the other collapses, what you are watching is one of the most ancient things a human being can do. Measuring themselves against the world through the bodies of strangers in the oldest arena we have ever built. Maybe the question isn't why we care so much about a game. Maybe the question is whether we were ever capable of not caring at all.